Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie, Jessica.
So today we are going to do our bestie book tea. So we are going to be spilling the tea on the books that we have read over the past week so that all of you guys can find out what we've been reading. So make sure to go grab your favorite beverage, whether that be tea or, I've got a Pepsi because it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. Grab that favorite coaster of yours and make sure to put it on there so your husband doesn't lose his mind if there's a ring somewhere. And let's get started spilling the tea on all the books that we have read over the past week. So, Mandy, do you want to get us started and tell me what you read this week, or the first book that you read?
I read Perfect Chemistry by Simone Elkeles. This was me going on a hunt. I'm a mood reader, as is Jessica. So I was really just in a mood. I had recently rewatched the After series movies. I really enjoyed the book series. I talk about it in one of our other videos. So I just was kind of wanting to find something similar to that, where maybe the couple gets together on some sort of bet. And as I found, you can't really find that with adult type books because it's not something adults usually do. So I found it in a high school romance. So it's about Brittany and Alex, but I got way more out of this book than just the bet. So Alex is in a gang.
Ooh.
He is Hispanic, and so there's a lot of Spanish words where he'll talk in English and he has like a couple Spanish words in there. And so I found myself looking those up
all the time.
Right? I don't know Spanish, so I wanted to know, like, what's he calling her? Like, is it, like, what kind of name does he have for her? So I wanted to look those up. And then she's like a good girl. Her sister is wheelchair bound, and has to have like round the clock type care, and her mom is basically just kind of checked out from life. Her dad just works nonstop, and so she feels really responsible for her sister and always being good at everything because her sister can't really do anything because of her disabilities. And so she's just like this, known around school as like the perfect girl, and she's really struggling with life because of all the pressures at home, and her parents are constantly threatening to send her sister away to like a home type situation, and she's like really against that. And so she's like she's a cheerleader dating like the captain of the football team type situation, and her and Alex end up getting teamed up for a year long for senior project in chemistry. And as you can see, he like actually starts to really see her, but she doesn't really want to get involved with him because he's a known gang member. But what's really interesting is it's dual point of view, which is always my favorite. And he doesn't want to be in the gang. It kind of happened out of a necessity. And so he's trying really hard to do better and like keep his brothers out of the gang and that sort of thing. And so it's interesting just to kind of see his perspective as well to everything as they kind of start to fall for each other. It eventually gets to what I like to call the Hia, but it takes a little bit to get there. I definitely enjoyed it. It was a solid 4 read for me.
Okay.
What'd you read?
Spill the tea. I know Mandy and I always message each other, what'd you read, but we're gonna spill the tea on what we read. Okay, so I read Hush Darling by Avery Kingston. So this story is about Gia and Tanner, and Gia has been married for a handful of years, just a few years. Her husband is in the mafia and he is very abusive towards her. He beats her all the time, but he is like demanding that she gets pregnant. She has done everything she can to make sure that she does not get pregnant. Her best friend from college is a gynecologist. And so within reason, because obviously he figured out, she's been trying to not get pregnant. Lo and behold, it happens. She finds out she's pregnant. She goes to the best friend who is the OBGYN who confirms her pregnancy. And they have been discussing this for a while. So they had a plan to get her out, to get her away now that she's pregnant. So she sneaks out, takes off the best friend who's the OBGYN has set up a vehicle and things for her. At some point, they have drawn blood because she makes it look like she's gone for a run in this secluded area, and there's like a vial of blood, and she pours it out and makes it look like tears up her jacket, makes it look like she fell into the lake and drowned. So she essentially fakes her own death. So then she gets in the car, and the plan is she's somewhere in I think she's somewhere in the New York area, she's somewhere in the New England area. And the plan is to get across the border, get into Canada. Like they've gotten false papers for her, false passport, and the whole nine. So they're trying to get her across the border. Well, there is a snowstorm that hits right as she's leaving. And so she has to take a few back roads. She has to take an alternate route than what was planned. And she gets to this little tiny town in the middle of nowhere. And she's got to stop. She's got some money, she's got some cash, but she has to stop because the storm has gotten to be that bad. It's like an epic snowstorm. And so the people in town tell her, you know, there is this little bed and breakfast. It's just up the road, up this way. There's also this place, this guy, Tanner, he owns these cabins as well, but he's kind of a grump and he's closed for winter. And so she's trying to make her way up to the bed and breakfast. Something happens with the car. She spins out, the car gets stuck. And so when she looks out the window, she sees this little cabin. And so she breaks into the cabin to stay warm for the night. And her intentions are to leave money when she leaves the next day to repair the window that she had to break to get in the cabin. So then we have Tanner, who has gone through some pretty traumatic stuff a few years back. He wasn't born deaf. He lost his hearing very early on, but his mom was deaf and his dad lost his hearing because of, I think they said it was fighting in Vietnam, I think is what it was. But he progressively lost his hearing growing up. So he can speak. He has a twin sister who is hearing, so she can hear. So he insisted on going to high school with her at an average high school instead of going to the one for kids with hearing impairments. And so he's kind of had the best of both worlds. Like he's had both situations. But he is a grump. He is a big time grump. So he finds her the next day, and obviously she doesn't know ASL, and they have to figure out how to communicate. And so she's actually with him for several days while they're snowed in, and he kind of starts to soften towards her and start to take care of her. In the meantime, you have the husband coming, you know, is he going to come after her? What's going to happen with that? How this is all going to play out in the end. I really liked this one. I gave it a solid 4 stars. The thing with it too is it was almost a little like when they explained it, it's not insta love, but you could almost see that where it could be. I mean, they really are attracted to each other really fast. And she's questioning that. She's like, I'm pregnant by some other guy and my husband beat me. She does have those tendencies to flinch away from him, and he figures it out pretty fast. He's a very smart guy. They actually refer to him as somewhat level of a genius. Like he is extremely intelligent. He went to Columbia and all that good stuff. So, but I definitely enjoyed this. I enjoyed the running from the husband aspect. I enjoy books where there's like a language barrier. She has to learn ASL. She has to learn from him how to communicate with him. And so that was just very interesting. I like the little things like where she's calling out for him, but his back is to her. So he doesn't know, you know, those kinds of things, which is very interesting. And I really did enjoy this book. So what's your next one?
Okay, my next one is called I Bet You by Ilsa Madden Mills. Mm-hmm. It's number 2 in a standalone series of called Wayland University. And so this focuses on Riker and Penelope. Riker is your typical football jock. And Penelope wrote, he was involved in something that happens in book 1. I did not read book 1. I still haven't read book 1. But it tells you a little bit about what happens. So in book 1, there was some underground fighting or something. He wasn't involved in it, but he knew it was going on. And she writes this article and basically blasts him for his involvement in this. And he's the star quarterback. And he ends up getting in a little bit of trouble, not because of her article, but because of like it already came out and she just happened to write the article to bring more light onto him at the university. And so she's a waitress at a popular campus restaurant where a lot of the college kids hang out. And while she's there, the football players come in, and Riker and some of his friends do a lot of bets on the football team. And there's a bet of like trying to get her to agree on a date. Well, she's not stupid. And she figures out really quickly that it was a bet. And she's like, never mind, like, get away from me type thing. And she wants to be a romance writer. So you would love this book because she writes blurbs in the book where she's writing her romance books, and she often has him, and she can't quite figure out why he's always the starring role in her books, but she'll do like stuff with pirates, and he's like the pirate, and he's gonna take her to the wheelhouse and like bend her over the wheel. she has a very vivid imagination, and she's like, why is he always the star of my like books?
Right.
And then she has a parrot that his name's Vampire Bill, and he like she's rescued him, and so he had learned some naughty things from like other people, and she does a word of the day with him. And I don't know much about birds and like their ability to pick up language. I think it might be a little far stretched that she teaches him a new word every day and he picks up on them. I don't know though, but anyways, he'll like say really funny things at awkward times for her. And so some of the guys on the team kind of end up making a second bet with him about like getting her into bed and stuff. And he is just like, oh, never mind, but the bet is still brought up quite a bit, but he's always like, never mind. Like, he's not really participating in it. He actually really starts to like her. But this is still kind of looming in the background. So it just kind of, goes from there, and it's their, how they work through the fallout of that and some other things that are going on. But it's a really solid read. I really like Ilsa Madden Mills, as you'll find out when I spill on the next book I read. So back to you.
Back to me. Okay, so the next one that I read is Sticks and Stone by Grace McGinty. This is a new to me author for this past year, and I have really fallen in love with her writing. So she tends to write mostly all reverse harem, as far as I can picture.
I just started this book. Do not give me any spoilers.
I'm not going to give you any spoilers, I promise, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody else. Okay. But she writes paranormal. This is one of her first, so paranormal reverse harem. This is one of her first not paranormal, I promise.
Right up your alley.
I know, right up my alley. But this is a hockey reverse harem. So this is straight up everyday hockey. So this one is about Nova. Her last name is Stone. That's where you get the Sticks and Stone. So Nova Stone. Her parents have just been killed in a car accident. And she's dealing with the trauma of losing her parents. I mean, she's like 24, I think is what they said she was. She's dealing with the trauma of losing her parents. Then all of a sudden, it's been like 3 or 4 weeks since the parents died. I can't remember how long it had been. Maybe it was 6. Doesn't matter. She gets a knock at the door. And it's her dad's best friend, who is the lawyer, and a social worker. And she's like, well, I don't need a foster. I'm too old for, to go to foster care. So I don't know what they're on the door for, or on my doorstep for. But come to find out, her dad had an affair. And so for her, this was really hard because she has to deal with the fact that the man that she thought her dad was is not who he was. So her dad had an affair and got this girl pregnant. This girl has had a baby. The baby's just a few weeks old. And the girl had an embolism in her sleep, and it killed her. And she was found the next day by friends and had the baby. And so she is the baby's only relative. The mom of the baby had been in foster care, and so grew up in foster care. So the mom didn't have family. And what I say, her name was Nova. Nova is the only family for this baby. And so she has to make a decision whether or not she is going to adopt baby Huey and, be his caretaker, or whether she's going to let him go into the system. And so it was a very short, if it were me, I'd have been the same way too. A very, very tiny amount of time of just thinking. And she's like, it's the only family I have left. I'm going to take this baby. She knows nothing about raising babies. But the process starts. She gets baby Huey. She's just overwhelmed and exhausted, has no clue what to do. The social worker shows up just before the papers were to be finalized and says to her, we have someone contesting the adoption. It's not blood, so you shouldn't have a problem, but it is a foster brother to the baby's mom. And it's actually 3 of them. So 2 guys are foster brothers that grew up with Elena, the mom to the baby, and then a buddy of theirs. But the one guy who is fully contesting it is he's a hockey player. He's a pro hockey player. His name is River, and he loves this baby. So you have River, Devin, and Rigby. So River and Devin are the foster brothers. River is an NHL player. Devin is a big time CEO. He has figured out how to make a lot of money in a short period of time using River's income. And he was there with the mom when she had the baby and helped a lot. So these guys are uncles to this baby, all 3 of them. Rigby is a hockey player as well on the same team as River, and they're just really close friends. And so she's a little worried. No big deal. It ends up she does get full custody of the baby. And when she gets full custody of it, these guys come to her and say, look, we'll give you, I can't remember, it was like $25 million, some huge amount of money if you let us have custody. And she's like, no. And then they're like, well, come live with us, come. And she's like, no. And they're like, come live with us for 3 months. And what ends up happening is they live, I think she's like in Texas or something. She's in one of the southern states. They live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so she agrees to go and spend 3 months with them because after the first few days with baby Huey, she realizes how exhausting it is doing it all on her own. And if she went there with them to try this out, then she would have 3 uncles to help her. They live in a big old house together. She would always have help. Now, Devin stays behind to help her a little bit while the boys go back home for hockey. What ends up happening is one of the guys realizes how much he likes her right off the bat. Rigby is like this total golden retriever of a guy. Devin is the closed off guy, and River's just kind of in between. And so one of them decides that they want her, and he knows that the other 2 want her as well. And so he proposes a polyamorous situation. And I love that they refer to it as polyamory. When you read a lot of reverse harems, they don't normally call it polyamory. They just, this is what it is, and this is how it goes. But they discuss it. And I enjoyed that part about the book. They sat down and they discussed the fact that this would be a poly relationship. And what does that mean? And what does that mean for them? And then you also get the aspect of 2 of these guys, well, all 3 of them are well-known, prominent figures. Like you've got 2 NHL players and 1 big-time CEO. And what happens when the world finds out that you're in a poly relationship and all of the stigma that goes along with that, as well as raising a baby, and a baby who has a heart condition at that. There isn't, I will say there isn't I didn't even notice this until a couple of days ago. There's kind of a little bit of we don't know what happens to Huey. We're told that Huey's heart could either correct itself or he'd have to have surgery or whatever. At the end of the book, she forgot to put that in there, what happened to Huey. But on her Facebook page, we got to find out. So actually we got to choose the ending as her readers on her Facebook page, but that's the deal. But I love this book. It was a 5-star read for me. I really, really enjoyed it. I like reverse harem, but again, a reverse harem has to be done a certain way. I can't have too many guys or I get confused. So this was perfect. You had the 3 guys, and Grace just does such a good job with her reverse harems. So yeah, so you started that one, right? You're not too far into it though.
I'm not.
Yeah, you got to finish it. So good. Okay, next read for you.
Okay, I read number 3 in the Wayland University series by Ilsa Madden Mills. It's called I Hate You. It's about Blaze and Charisma. We see them quite a bit in the book that I just talked about, book 2. Charisma and Penelope are like roommates. And so Vampire Bill is back being his hilarious self again. Blaze and Riker are friends and on the football team together. So they were kind of thrown together because of Penelope and Riker. And Blaze is kind of your typical playboy football player, and Charisma is very like guarded with her heart. She has very like specific rules, but they hook up together quite a few, 3 or 4 times in the book I Bet You. And in that book, there was a party that happened, and we find out in I Hate You that he actually kind of publicly dumped her, even though they weren't together. They were just spending a lot of time together and hooking up. He basically dumps her, like they're dancing at this house party together, and he's just like, this is over, you're not my type. So he dumps her at her own party in front of all of her friends. So that's kind of where the I Hate You comes from. But they kind of just keep ending up running into each other, even though she's tried really hard and has managed to avoid him, because she like just doesn't leave, and she just doesn't go to places where he's going to be. And they just kind of explain it away. There's like winter break and stuff. And so now she's sort of in a place where she's just not going to keep hiding from him, but she's still pretty upset about what happened. And they kind of just end up being around each other, like because of circumstances, going to the same college, having the same friends. And it's kind of interesting. It just kind of goes back and forth, and you can't really tell like who doesn't want to be together, but who does, sort of, because they just go back and forth. And I rated it a solid 4. I enjoy the writing. I enjoyed the story. There was just a little bit though with like why they kept putting themselves back together when they didn't want to be together, because they actually probably did want to be together. And it just was a little, I don't know. I liked the book and all, but it just was a little different how it just kept going back and forth. It does get to the Hia eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the book, is just the back and forth pull between the two of them. And they just both are trying to guard their hearts and protect themselves. And so they're kind of going about it in the wrong way, I guess, is the best way to put that.
Okay.
Right. So what else did you read?
Okay, so I read The Cityscape Affair by Jessica Hawkins. So this is a 3-book trilogy. It was just all lumped into one. So it was technically 3 full-length books. It was a lot of reading. So the first book is Come Undone. The second book is Come Alive. And the third book is Come Together. Now this is a book about an affair. And I don't typically read those. That's something I don't typically seek out. But this was done. I like the way this was done. And I'm not going to say a ton about this book just because I don't want to give away what happens. But you have Olivia, who is in a marriage. She's been married for, I want to say it was 5 years. And it's very obvious from the beginning. She chose the safe guy. She chose the one. He doesn't ask questions about her. He doesn't want to know why she has this specific scar on her body. She's got her guard up, and she's never let it down. And it has stuff to do with her home life growing up, obviously. But she just has a lot of baggage, and her husband just isn't willing to dig into that and figure out why. Granted, on the flip side of it, she don't tell either. So it's not necessarily all his fault that they're having issues. She doesn't think that they're having issues, but they go to a performing arts thing one night. I can't remember if it was opera or ballet or wherever, but they were at a performing arts situation. And she looks across the room and she makes eye contact with this guy. And it's just like instant, like chemistry from across the room. That has stuck with her for a few weeks. And then she gets to work, and she's up for promotion with another girl. She works at, I think it was a magazine. But she works as a publisher? She was an editor. She was working towards becoming an editor. And so there's someone gets fired, and it's between her and this other girl for this promotion. And right at this time, they're getting to do their most eligible bachelor edition, which is their biggest thing of the year, biggest edition of the year. And come to find out, one of the guys is David, who is the guy that she met from across from. He's this big time architect. And because of that situation, she has to spend time with him, interviewing him and getting to know him. And so things progress from there for them. And I won't say much more because it really does give away all of the books, what happens. But just know that, yes, there is cheating. He tries not to, to a point. When he finds out she's married, he backs off. He's like, no, she's married. But things happen. So I gave this one a solid 4 stars all the way across. I did enjoy it. I read all 3 books in a day because I just couldn't put them down. So they were that good. But typically I don't lean towards this kind of stuff, but it was worth it. So
my next one is I Promise You, which is book number 4 in the Wayland University by Ilsa Madden Mills. This is Dylan and Serena. And Dylan was Riker's backup quarterback. Blaze and Riker have now graduated, so Dylan is the quarterback for the team. But there's another incoming freshman. That's all the talk about. So there's a lot of pressure and stress on him because he could lose his spot to this other quarterback. And the other quarterback's kind of a cocky jerk. And so they don't really get along. And there is a lot, like I had talked about before, there was some betting. The football players are super superstitious. And so they make Dylan participate in this sorority house contest thing. And so there's these 3 girls that are vying for his attention and they follow him everywhere. And he has to pick one of them to take to this homecoming type dance. So in the meantime, the 3 of them are glued to him and they're sorority girls. So you know how all that goes. And so Serena is not dressed well. She's in this hat, baggy pants, and she's at the grocery store, the Piggly Wiggly, I think is what it's called.
They have we don't have those here, but there are. When I go down south to see the mother-in-law, Piggly Wigglies.
Yes. So she's in there and he comes in with what she calls his harem because these 3 girls are hanging on him. And he goes and buys all the Oreos and she's pissed because she wanted a package of Oreos. So they get in this debate and he's basically says, don't you know who I am? And she's like, yeah, and she uses a different name. She calls him Dimitri or something. And she's like, you play lacrosse, right? He's the football quarterback. And then he's keeps talking to her and she just keeps throwing out all these different D names and not Dylan. And then talking about lacrosse all the time. It's super, super funny. And then, she calls him David. She's like, oh, you're David. You play lacrosse. How is the team? And he's like, what? How do you not know who I am type thing? And so they just go back and forth with their banter and it is fantastic. Well, eventually they both realized that they had made he had kissed her at the freshman bonfire and he spent months trying to find her. And there's this legend that whoever you kiss at the bonfire is your soulmate. And he spends months trying to find her and he never does. And so he kind of just gives up on it. And then he realizes who she is then. And so he ends up giving her a ride home because her car won't start. And he has the other 3 girls with him and 2 of them kind of just instantly become her friend. And so she kind of ends up being friends with them. They have fantastic chemistry. It's really great. And so, then their great chemistry and their banter kind of starts to disappear a little bit. And we focus a lot more on what has happened in Serena's past and why she has her heart so guarded. And Dylan is just kind of focused on her, but he still has to do this ridiculous thing with these other girls. And the 2 girls that become friends with her are not a threat. They're totally team Dylan and Serena, but the other girl, Ashley, still really wants him and kind of makes her feel inadequate, even though she's often described by Dylan and other as being the most watched girl and all this stuff. So it was a little different. And I was almost a little disappointed with how their banter and chemistry kind of started to disappear the more serious they got, because that kind of really made the beginning of the book. So It was still a solid 4. I also kind of wonder if maybe I started to run out of steam on it because I read the 3 books kind of back to back like that. I know that sometimes happens to me. But all in all, a solid 4. I would recommend the series. I haven't read the first book, but from what I read from the 3 books, I would definitely recommend the series.
Okay.
All right.
So I have 3 more books because I read a few more books than Mandy last week. It happens. Some weeks I'll read more, some weeks she won't. So we're going to bust those out real quick. So I did a reread of Twisted Hearts by Cora Reilly. So this is the 5th book in the Cora Chronicles. This one I know is not always a favorite of people, just because this one, we'll talk about that in a second. But I love the Cora Chronicles. I love me some angst and some drama, so that's why I do enjoy this one. So I did a reread. I mean, this is probably like the 3rd or 4th time I reread it. Probably could be more than that too. But this is about Savio and Gia. So Savio, we've seen him grow up through the other books, through the Cora Chronicles, and now he's an adult. And we've also met Gia earlier on in the books as well. She is the little sister to one of Savio's friends, and she wants to do MMA fighting, but because her family is just that strict Italian, the heritage that they have, like the traditional families is what they call them. Her family doesn't want her to do that. They want her married off. She needs to be engaged. They typically around the age of 16. Sorry, there's a hair floating in my face. Typically around the age of 16, they have them betrothed to somebody. She's only allowed to wear dresses. When it comes time to like actually learning, her dad finally agrees when Remo goes, the older brother to Savio, goes and talks to her dad about it's important that a girl knows how to defend herself. Then the father agrees, but she has to be with her brother. The boys can't touch her in certain areas, in certain ways. There's all these strict rules for her. She meets Savio when he first comes to Vegas, when his brothers and him take over the Las Vegas Cora. She meets him. She's like, I think he's 14. There's a little bit of an age gap. It's just a few years. It's like 4 years or something in between. She's pretty young when she meets him, but when she meets him, she knows that is the man that she is going to marry. And so she has this crush on him her whole life. She learns how to fight with her brother and with him, and she's always trying to impress him. But Savio is a man whore. I mean, he wins the title of man whore of the century. He has his bull tattoo, which it's the tattoo of a minotaur right above his junk that he had his brother do. And everybody talks about riding his bull. Oh, wow. And for a lot of people don't like this book. Part of the reason why is because for more than half the book, we're watching Savio be a man whore. And I personally like the drama of that, which is why I like the drama and the angst. And so Savio, when Gia gets to be 16, it's time for her family to find her that husband and get her betrothed. And they've put it off because she begged her family not to do it because she wanted Savio. Savio's oblivious. He's out there living his best life, having a great time fighting his cage fights, and he don't care. This is just a little girl to him. But when he finds out that she's being betrothed to somebody else, he kind of wants his cake and to eat it too. He wants to be able to have his cake and eat it too. So he wants her because he doesn't want anybody else to have her. And so he insists on the dad, they have to break her betrothal. There's a way that they do it in the book. And then he's betrothed to her. And so she keeps asking, when we're going to have our engagement party, when are we going to have these things? Well, he strings her along for a couple of years. And he uses the whole, I want her to go to college because they don't normally go to college. And I want her to do, all these things and that the traditional families would never allow their daughters to do. But it's with the intention of stringing her along so that he doesn't have to marry her. But then we get to a part where at some point, he's going to get hit in the head with something and start to realize what he is screwing up. But a lot of the book is about that, her trying to get him to recognize her and what they could potentially have, and him just being an absolute idiot. So I see why some people don't like it, but I do. I love this book. So I did a reread of this one. I guess I like to be ticked off and annoyed at characters. I don't know what it is. So but whatever. And then the next book that I read was Flawless by Elsie Silver. We talk about this in our sports romance quite a bit, but I loved it. It was so good. So it is about a pro bull rider. His name is Rhett, and he gets in trouble. He gets in trouble with his sponsors because he said he didn't like milk at some point in time. And apparently that is one of his sponsors. You got the country boy, you got the milk, it's a thing. And so he's losing his sponsors. And so his agent decides that he needs a babysitter. And the agent's daughter, Summer, is assigned to basically live with Rhett and his family and like make sure that he doesn't screw up to lose more sponsors. And so to basically to keep him in line. And so she goes to their farm, the family farm. She's living out there with them. There's a lot of banter. She gets along with his family. Great. Not so much with him, but with his family. Sure. Great. And, he's getting older. He's, his shoulder hurts, his back, like there's things that are hurting. He's realizing that at his age, most people are not bull riding anymore. He's realizing that he's hurting himself. There's all these things that are coming into play. But as she and him spend more time together, obviously they start to develop feelings for each other. So I really enjoyed that one. That was a solid 4, like 4.5. That was really good. I really, really enjoyed that one. And then the very last book that I read this last week, Mandy, no laughing, dang it. I did a reread of Sam's Secret. So this is from the Ice Planet Barbarians spinoff. This is the Ice Home, but the audio came out. So I read this when it came out a year ago or whenever it came out, sometime last year. And I just reread the audio or listened to the audio because why not while I was doing, stuff. But this one is about Sam and Sessa. And so we've seen Sessa grow up from the very beginning of Ice Planet Barbarians. He was just a little boy, and now he is an adult. My favorite line in the book is where he's like, oh, Sam, so one of the girls, Florence, calls him a snack. And he's like, well, maybe Sam, I'm a snack. Well, maybe Sam doesn't want a snack. She wants a full meal because she's not paying attention to him. And so he couldn't, there's that, they don't understand. He's an alien. He doesn't always understand the things that we say as humans. But yeah, she called him a snack. So he has grown up. He has become hot. So for the last book that I read, and again, Mandy, no laughing. I read Sam's Secret by Ruby Dixon. This is what I can't remember what number this is. Oh, this is the 14th book in the Ice Home series, which is the spinoff from Ice Planet Barbarians. I read it when it first came out, but the audio just came out. So I wanted to listen to the audio while we were running around.
How many Ice Planet books are there?
So there's 22 Ice Planet Barbarian books. And then there are 16 of the Ice Home.
And you've read them all?
Well, I haven't read the very, very last one, the 16th of the Ice Home, just because so for the last 2 years, the last book that I read on the last day of the year for my Goodreads has always been one of these. And so I'm saving it to read on New Year's Eve.
Gotcha.
So I have myself a Ruby Dixon. I always end with the year with Ruby Dixon. It's just fun to lighthearted. But so this is the book. Mandy's laughing at me. But this one, I listened to the audio. I wanted to listen to the audio. So this one is about Sam and Sessa. And so Sessa, we've seen him grow up from a child when the girls first landed on the planet in Ice Planet Barbarians. He was one of the little kids, and he has grown up. He spent time at the Ice Home Beach when the new set of girls landed there. But he has since gone home and he's grown up. So this is 3 years later. There's this 3-year age gap between the last book and this one. And he comes to the Ice Home Village because his brother is Rokon, who has the knowing sense. So he just kind of knows things, and he's feeling restless, and he knows that his mate is there, and his brother's had dreams about it. So he decides to go and visit the Ice Home Village. And so he does. So when he gets there, all the girls, there's only 3 girls at this point that don't have mates. And they're like, what happened to Sessa? He grew up. There's one point where they refer to him as a snack, and he's like, I don't know, why doesn't Sam like me? Because Sam is the only one that isn't paying him attention. He's like, maybe she wants a full meal and I'm just a snack. Like, he doesn't understand some of the things that we say as humans and doesn't fully understand it, which is kind of cute. Sam has been through some trauma. She was being stalked by her ex-boyfriend on Earth before she was abducted. And she'd spent a long time trying to get away from him. She thought for sure he was going to be what killed her. And at first she felt very safe and secure being on this planet because nobody's going to come and get her. Like, he can't get to her and they can't leave once they have their queen. So she's like, nobody's going to land here. Nobody's going to come and get me. Well, come to find out, like, once Daisy shows up, and if you've read the stories, you know that a girl shows up eventually. So Sam is dealing with some trauma. So when she first was abducted, she had been trying to escape a boyfriend who had been stalking her for years. And she felt that he was, like, she knew that he was going to be what killed her one day. He was just that crazy. And then all of a sudden she's been abducted by aliens. And so when she wakes up on this alien planet, she's like, score, won the lottery. I'm stuck here. Nobody else can get here. He can never find me. And she's pretty secure in that for a while until a pod is dropped on the planet and Daisy, another girl, pops out of the pod. And then she realizes that, okay, so yeah, no, he can't find me. At least I don't think he can find me, but now there is a way. Like, that security is rattled for her. And so she is dealing with the trauma of, what if he shows up? What if he somehow finds me and comes here? Which I know is extremely far-fetched, but that is trauma for you, right? Like, she's just, she has that trauma. And so Sessa has, like, when they resonate right off the bat. And so he has to help her overcome that fear. And he has to prove to her that, not necessarily he has to prove to her, but he's a few years younger, but he's sweet and he's kind and he's not pushy and he's not abusive and he's not going to track her down. And she has to come to terms with that. She has to start to see that. So this one was like all the Ruby Dixon books. They're always a fun, sexy time with big blue people. But this is like, this was one that had a little bit more, the themes in it were a little bit different. It's not, I mean, it's a, 3.5 for me. This one was, it's not like one of my absolute favorites. There were some things that kind of drove me a little nutso, but all in all, I love going back to Ice Home, like to Knot Hoth, and just getting to enjoy that. So that was my last book for that week.
All right.
Yeah. So, do you want me to close it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll have to cut that part out.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for our Bestie Book Tea. We hope that you enjoyed hearing about what we read over the last week. We hope that you got some great recommendations. Let us know what you've been reading and what you've been enjoying in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And we will see you next time.